He is the greatest player and QB of all time. The man has won more championships than any team in the NFL. He was never the highest paid quarterback. And I don't even think he was top 3 ever.
So the Mercenaries could come help him.
For sure.
Ironically.
Yeah. What athlete do you most identify with a single city? Yes. And therefore like their team?
Yep.
Right. In all of sports. Is it Kobe in LA, right? Like
is it Jeter in New York?
Yes.
You know,
like who in all of sports most identifies with a single team and city?
We should go through that, but I think that then the question, though, of course, like you said, is like, what does that mean that somebody stayed with that city? And does that mean that they were loyal, right? And I think then you get to like another question, which is like loyal versus transactional, you know, and I think that cuts across a bunch of stuff.
Oh boy.
For sure. Well, and I'm not saying, I mean, he's not like this at all, but it's funny, you know, Russell Westbrook's like bounced around to how many teams the last, 8 years.
Yeah.
And every round of the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, he's playing a former team in the West because I think he's played for like almost the entire West. And not that I'm not saying that.
No,
but
I
like,
get it. I get it.
It's just a different road. But there are certainly these pros that have been, it's a little more mercenary and kind of transactional, and they do bounce from team to team.
And are we talking about specifically good situations, optimal situations? Can you be a mercenary on an average team, right? And can you be transactional on a below average team, just there for the payday, right? And does that change your view of that mercenary?
I have more respect for the mercenary that's chasing championships than the paycheck. If that makes sense. How many guys have we seen sign giant free agent deals on shitty teams that have the cap space, and you never really see them again or hear about them in significant moments,
But dude, it's so funny because like, are you even a mercenary if you're going after a championship? Is there like a different word that you should use, for somebody who's like ring chasing? I think Brother Battier told us that. What did you say you were doing when you went to the Heat? Because you were going to go to the Heat or the Spurs. Well, you said I wasn't ring chasing, but I was doing something else. I feel like you had a distinction.
I was totally ring chasing, right? I'm not above saying I was chasing a ring. Like I never won. I've been out of the second round of the playoffs. Like I played 10 years in the NBA. Why the hell wouldn't I want to chase a ring? I mean, I had done everything else. I had made all NBA defense. I, had made really good money. At that point, there was one thing I hadn't done. And so why wouldn't I go to the one place I knew it was going to happen? Right. In a matter of my last couple of years in the NBA. And if I could be part of that and be one of the reasons why, like that's only additive. So like I was a complete mercenary, and, it wasn't altruistic. I wasn't like, oh, the city of Miami just needs a champion. They need the city of Miami needs just a good guy, glue guy, just to, rally the troops and start the Battier Take Charge Foundation. And
that's right.
If we win a championship, that's just a cherry on the ice cream. No, I went to Miami to win. All right. But again, I've never been dinged for that. No one's ever said, oh, Battier is super selfish for going to win a championship. But like, that's what I did. And I don't really apologize for it because it works out. And now I get to go and fly around the world and tell people why the Heat are great and why Pat Riley's great and Spoelstra's great. And it created an entire second industry,
I was just about to say the Battier industrial complex, of I've won at every level. It only works, if you went and won in the NBA, right? And so I think that, maybe Brother Battier was playing 4D chess here, which is like, yeah, I'd like to win a ring, but what I really want is a long-term career where I'm labeled as like capital W winner,
Dude, and not only did he hit it, he got 2 of them. It's easy to be a one-trick pony, right? And to do it one time. It's hard, Shane, to have done it at multiple levels, and not many people can say that. And so to go back to like, listen, you became a free agent, and I think it would only be in the competitor, I think that we hope to see in all of us is like, yeah, as you're like weighing your options, and I've got 3, 4, 5 options. Of course, hopefully, if they're on the same ballpark, you're going to pick the place that has the best chance of success and for you to fit into that success. And clearly, you made the fucking right decision.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are tales of this that haven't
Yeah.
worked out that well, right? Like Charles Barkley famously
Yeah.
chasing championships at the end of his career and couldn't get it, couldn't pick the right team. And
Yeah,
Well,
but I think that okay, so listen, I think the championship chasing is like an easy one of like if you're gonna play and contribute, it's actually pretty easy to defend. Like the reason to play sports is to win. So that's actually I don't think like as tough. I think that
no,
like
yeah.
the people that chase the money, okay, above the winning. I think that's actually more of an interesting thing when you think about it. And like I don't know this person, obviously, but like to me, an example that always comes to mind is this guy Joe Johnson, right? Who Shane, of course, you like played with. But like that Suns team he was on so many years ago, like was kind of on the brink, right? They were so good. Steve Nash, Stoudemire, all these guys. And then he left, and I think he went to Atlanta and got this huge contract and then like never won anything. Like
Yeah.
went to go be the number one guy, got all the money, and then went from kind of like winning a lot to nothing. And I think it's interesting because like he probably cost himself his chances of winning a championship, right? But he set his family up for the rest of their lives with like tremendous dollars. I think that's like I don't know, was he right? Was that the right answer?
Well, I guess it depends on how you're. I mean, what are you grading off of, right? Like, what's your
Yeah, you tell me.
Because on the flip side of that, like the exact opposite example, in my opinion, is I don't think for a single year of his career, Tom Brady led like the NFL in any salary, right? Like he was never the highest paid quarterback ever. He is the greatest player and QB of all time. The man has won more championships than any team in the NFL, right? Over a 20-year period. And I don't even think he was top 3 ever. Right? Like he purposefully took less money to win championships.
So the Mercenaries could come help him.
Yeah, for sure.
Ironically.
Yeah, exactly.
But see, but this is where, like, I will tell you. Okay, so you guys both played. Okay, look, as the fan perspective here, you definitely understand when someone goes and takes the money. You definitely understand. You get it, right? But it's so disappointing, right? Because sports are romantic. They're you don't want it to be that way. You don't want it to be people living their lives and setting their families up economically. You want them to be like, right? Like it's for the game, it's for the championship, it's for the fans, it's all these things, right? And so I can tell you, like those things when these teams break up, are like they suck, and like you get it, but like it is so interesting. Like I think college basketball is an interesting version of this now. Like I love college basketball. I love Duke basketball. I love it. But it's harder to root for the team now when the guys stay for a year and then bounce than it was when people stayed for 4 years and you'd watch these people progress. Yep. You don't fault anybody for it, but I will say that like it's a lot less fun for the fan when there is like, you know what I'm saying? Like not the continuity.
Yep. Where does that responsibility fall? Like who's to blame for this? Obviously it's capitalism is to blame ultimately, right? But is there like a moral like pejorative to create an atmosphere where the entertainment is in the loyalty and in the journey? Or is the onus on just like, look, we want to win, and like we all know what happens when you go to the college football playoffs, and when you go to the Final Four, like how many millions of dollars that's generated for your school and donations and increased applications and media money and all these things. Is like that the goal of college athletics now, right? Like where does the responsibility fall?
I think. I mean, I know. Listen, all of us on here like would try not to be judgmental, but it falls on the player. Patrick Mahomes chose to take a 10-year contract where they spread out his cap. He is not in the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, right? And he chose to do that. Tom Brady again did it his entire career. Like I do think there's an element of respect for those guys. I know I have an element of respect for Tom Brady. That he for 20 years did this, right? It wasn't a one-time thing. Like this is a decision that he made that the goal was higher for him. Like, I don't want to just be the highest paid player. I don't want to just make the most money I can make. I want to try to win freaking championships while I'm here. And the crazy thing is you're still making good money. Like what, like, and again, like the difference between making 60 and 45 or 50. Like, again, it's life-changing money. And I don't, no judgment for maxing it out.
Yeah, but so a couple of things on that. One, if Brady feels confident he'll play for a long time, right? It's easier to forego some of it versus someone who's like me, NFL, not for long. Like,
Yeah, but he didn't know that at the time. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy looking
no, no,
back.
no. But I'm saying, like, at least there's a question of, like, getting yours. I guess my point is, I think duration helps you be a little more sanguine about the short term. But the more interesting thing, Alex, I think, is like, dude, even after doing that for years and years and years with this team, right? At the end of it, they're like, hey, bro, you're not our guy. Even after all that. And so the thing that's interesting is when the people do it, even Tom Brady, right? Like, the team at some point's like, okay, time's up. And so you have to do that for yourself. It's like that loyalty does not extend usually from the team.
For sure. It doesn't.
That's a good point, Ravi.
No.
Right?
No. But like, it's still, he had already, even when they cut him, the Patriots, that is,
I mean, think
was
about
the greatest player ever. And that's what he was after.
No, I agree, but
Right?
I'm just saying,
He had won more championships at that point, and then clearly was a fucking mistake. He wins another one. Belichick's fired a few years later. Like, I still think it never changed what Tom was like.
No, but I get it. But my point, Alex, is I'm saying if the argument is you should do it like Brady and give it up and go for longer, my only point is what you would probably hope for is that at the end they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. We really appreciate everything you've ever done for us. We're going to do this for you. And to your point on capitalism, of which I am the biggest fan that there could be. However, at the end, people are sort of like, well, okay, we've gotten what we need. Goodbye. Like,
yeah, but I still think, look at the bigger picture. Look at Tom, the rest of his life, whatever he wants to do, even doing TV now, that comes from his decision that he decided to maximize winning championships over his salary. Does that make sense? Right. And so, like, again, even though that blip of like, yeah, the Patriots obviously and Belichick were cutthroat at the end, but again, for him, what he was optimizing for was like salary was up there, but it wasn't number one, is what I'm saying. And there are certainly these guys, though, that's all they optimize for.
One point, and it colors into this conversation, and it's an argument that I hate. I hate. Maybe because I joined the Miami Heat. It's the homegrown versus the mercenary teams. Okay. And somehow that the homegrown New England Patriots championships were purer because Tom Brady never left. Not to mention all the mercenaries that came in, to help Brady along the way. Right. And, when people talk about the San Antonio Spurs, right? Like somehow their championship, and I love the Spurs. I love Popovich. I love Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, like I love competing against those guys. Those guys beat us. Like I appreciate them because they're just champions and they're great. But like their championships don't mean more because they drafted all those guys, right? It means something because they worked fucking hard and it's hard to win championship. But like that's kind of like public's like, yeah, well, it's a little extra special because it's homegrown.
Look at Alex's face right now.
I'm just realizing this is a phenomenal fucking topic with Shane here because basically his team was just all mercenaries.
Of course.
The Miami Heat,
the Miami Mercenaries
were all the Miami Mercenaries. Like they were just fucking there for,
Because I wanted to go live in a tax-free state.
Hold on.
Unbelievable weather and win championships.
What about Udonis? Udonis? He wasn't a mercenary. Dude stuck around. He did it.
He did.
Shane, so I think this is super interesting, which is like is it pure when it's homegrown? I think that here's what I can say. No, it's not pure. I do think that if the fans have suffered with the same people for some period of time, maybe it's even sweeter for those fans to celebrate with those people, right? And so I think there's that. I do think, and this is where Alex, obviously, look, I don't think this is going to surprise you but like of course I agree with the Brady approach, right? Like I'm trying to make sure I give the other side of it, but of course I agree with that. I think the more interesting thing on that is I actually think that transactional it's just optimizing for the wrong time frame, right? Which is if you're transactional, if you're searching for highest paid, of course it's going to work in the short term. But the real thing that the people who are not transactional is they're long-term greedy. Right? It is actually better for them if you extend it out, usually for a long time, right? It is actually better for them to do it the way of like, no, like I'm all about this. I'm all about the winning. I'm all about the team because you end up with a better reputation, better relationships, probably more money in the long term. But like the transactional people, and frankly, this is in my industry too, right? They're focused on, they think that there is one thing that's going to determine what happens, and they're like,
Yeah.
I got to get that one thing rather than thinking about their life.
I'm going to push back a little bit on this homegrown thing, though.
Okay.
I do think and I like, listen, world championships are freaking world championships. It is insanely hard to do. Again, there's only one person at the end that gets the ring and is on the top of the mountain, like, again. But I think there is something special to stay on basketball. Like, listen, Nikola Jokic, like getting him in the second round and developing and what he's become and then going and winning a championship, right? Steph Curry, obviously now one of the greatest players of all time, but like fell in the draft. I mean, he wasn't, what was he, the 13th pick, and they developed him in this culture and he's changed the game. I mean, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, like, I just think, listen, if the Thunder were playing the Lakers, like, I'm rooting for the Thunder because they're like a homegrown, like it's done an organic way.
So Utah football all of a sudden has an influx of money from the Alex Smith assistant GM job. Okay. And they have a chance to go out and, get every top position of player in the transfer portal. Okay. Are you kicking that championship out of bed because you got all the top talent? Or no. We got this freshman quarterback that we got to develop. And if we win with this guy, like, it's just going to mean more. Bull-loney. A win's a win. And if you're a fan or a fan base, you just want to win. You want the champagne in your eyes, right? Ruby, does Caleb Williams have to win a Super Bowl for you to enjoy that Super Bowl a little bit more? No. You will take any Super Bowl.
No.
If the score is 3-0 every game. And
also, if Alex Smith comes out of retirement and wins a Super Bowl just for the last game, that'd be okay with me.
Listen, what are we talking about here?
I hear you. Banners are banners. That's right. However, the connection, and I think this is probably what's different, the connection with the fans, and not just your local fans. I think the respect from like nationwide, anybody in the sport is different when it's homegrown. Right?
Yeah,
like when it is organic.
Listen, Great. Okay, so let me ask you guys both a question on this. And then, just as a sports question. Shane, well, I think I know the answer to this for Alex, but I'll ask you. Shane, what is the fan base that you feel most connected to? Meaning, like, when they say, oh my gosh, when you did this, I remember this. What is that? Do you have a fan base from your career that when they talk to you, it feels like the most like you? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, Duke, obviously.
Yeah. And so, okay. So Alex, what about you? What is the fan base that you feel most like connected to when they talk to you about like something they saw you do?
Are we counting college?
You can count college. You can count anything you want.
Yeah, I think the more interesting question here, Shane, like, take Duke out of this. Like, as a pro, again, to keep this, like,
great.
There is a transaction element into this, right? Like, you aren't just playing as an amateur. Like,
I do think it's notable that both of you, though, said college. I agree with you because that does make the point a little bit of like the connection is unique, right? When it's not about the money.
Yep.
And I think that's probably why, before you answer, Shane, I'll give you a second to think. The hardest thing about the college sport environment currently is that we've lost that element, that there is this transaction and it's yearly. It's the turnover that you've lost some of that connection and loyalty that was there, that I think made college sports so special, right? The alumni and the student body. And I think all being a part of something bigger like that, I think is kind of gone. And that's unfortunate, but I think I think it's a more interesting question as a pro. Like,
my first 5 years in Memphis were the first 5 years the Memphis Grizzlies ever existed, right? So it's like you never forget your first kiss, right? I was the city of Memphis's first kiss. Okay, so there's a certain romanticism about like my time there that when people see me on the street and say, "Oh man, like I loved you. And, we were not good my first couple of years. We got swept 3 years in the playoffs. So like we didn't have like a body of work, but we were the first kiss, right? we can all remember our first kiss, right? And we'll always remember it. No matter, it was sloppy and it wasn't the best. We've had better kisses in life, but it was the first one, right? So that is a little bit different than like my time in Miami. And so when I go back to Miami, I'm walking in Publix and they say, "Hey, champ, thanks so much." I watched the game with my dad, and I just remember Game 7 when you hit 6 threes, and I just want to say thank you for bringing a championship, right? So again, like I played 3 years in Miami, right? And like in that city, I can, for the most part, people appreciate like
you're not paying for drinks in Miami.
Yeah, I get a lot of free drinks in Miami, and that's cool. And so, but also championships do that. Championships are forever, and so it doesn't matter like what your role is. You're part of a championship team, and you're remembered.
Would you choose
between
Miami and Memphis, right? Which one do you think you feel most? I understand that it's picking nits, but which one do you feel most connected to? With the fans.
Well, it's different. It's two totally different situations.
Can't choose. Okay.
I can't. It's like it's like having kids, man. Like which one do you love more? No, you love them both differently in their own way.
What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I struggle with this question. I actually just got asked this by somebody. And again, just quickly, I played 8 years, my first 8 years for the Niners, which is where I currently live. Again, married a Bay Area girl, so this is home. And then I played 5 for Kansas City, which by far my best 5 years of my career, not even close. And that regime is still there, which is an important context for this. Like it's the same. Everybody is still, and obviously the success they've gone on to also, I think, plays a role in this. And then the last 3 in Washington, which were so tumultuous, but I had my leg injury there, which was insane. And I got to come back, but there's been ownership change. There's been name change. Like there's been so much turnover, even though it was the most recent team I played for. This is this is so tough. I get love in both places, so I'm so grateful for that. Especially because
Can I tell you what I thought you were going to say?
My Niner career was so shitty for so long.
Can I tell you what I thought you were going to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've never been with you in KC, okay? But I've been with you in the airport around here. And whenever someone comes up to you in the Bay, when I'm around, they actually talk often about the same play. They talk about the play against the Saints, right? And the reason I had thought that you were going to say like that fan base and that group was actually I thought that it was a little bit more of like they went through it with you, right? Like that, the faithful here.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I feel like that was like they felt like that was their touchdown too.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because like it had been bad.
And I actually totally. Right? And I actually think it's pertinent into this conversation because for a different way, when after my first 4 years were so rocky and not great, like I had a chance to leave.
Yeah.
Like after my 4th year, like to just get out of Dodge. I'd had 4 coordinators in 4 years, 2 head coaches. Like it had been so tumultuous. But again, like I'd had injuries. I had, so inconsistent. And I definitely had a chance to leave. And I distinctly remember looking around. But the Niners also offered me a chance to come back. So that was like, I think, key in this. I distinctly remember thinking that there are these kind of journeyman quarterbacks. And that once you start that journey, right? Like once you think the grass is greener and you jump on a 1-year deal somewhere else, and then that doesn't work. And then you're jumping again to another one. And like it just continues. And then
you're all of a sudden you're Gus Frerotte.
Yes, totally. And at best, you're Gus Frerotte. But like most of those guys, to be honest,
Gus Frerotte.
But Shane, also, is there any better name for a journeyman quarterback than Alex Smith? By the way, which is like it's just like so. It would actually work really well if you weren't so good. The journeyman, like an Alex Smith type.
So Robbie,
but you just wash out of the league. Sorry to finish. Like you wash out of the league after like 7 years, and it's just kind of whatever. And I distinctly and in some ways it's a mercenary in the sense that you're like, it's get out of Dodge, right? Like, oh, it's better over there. It was, and in some ways it's like, it wasn't my fault. And so just to finish up, I do think the fact that then I stayed and that finally it fucking turned.
I love that you stayed, but like it is, every athlete, even the greatest Tom Brady, was asked to leave at some point, right?
Yeah.
And so, as much as you don't want to be the mercenary and try to find the best situation for you, all right, like the time is ticking to when they are going to ask you to leave. Right, like the most famous saying on the when a coach gets hired is like, all this means is the clock has started for my dismissal. Right.
The future former coach,
Yeah,
the future
exactly.
former quarterback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Robbie, like talk about this phenomenon in the business world.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
totally.
And I get into a lot of disagreements with my good friend Nick Arison, who I think in pro sports I can't name a franchise that values loyalty more than the Miami Heat. I mean, the people who work there have worked there for decades, literally decades, from the head coach to Pat, right? And so like the picture of loyalty. Um, but I would always argue with Nick to say, look, like attrition is healthy, and it's okay to have some mercenaries leave, right? Because it gives you a chance to replenish your bullpen, right? And in a business sense, how do you balance keeping your most loyal employees, people who are great producers, but also encouraging those people to leave so you can refresh the culture, refresh the performers, right? Because it can get stale, and you get disrupted if you don't have a, a modicum of that balance of attrition and loyalty. And I don't even know if loyalty is the right word, and I don't think it's loyalty can often be misconstrued for um, just lack of ambition and lack of wanting to move on to the next spot. You're comfortable, right? And that's when loyalty, I think, becomes a detriment in your organization. So talk about, to me, when you're on an Instacart, when you're at Sequoia, the balance between loyalty, transactionalism, and mercenarism.
So, maybe a few different things that I think about this. One, I also love Nick Harrison, and his wedding is where we first started hanging out. So, well, but I on this one have a slightly different view than he does, and I'll tell you why. So, to your point, so one, I think the only thing that makes like a lifer somewhere special is that it's unique. If everybody's a lifer, it's not it's not unique anymore, right? Like it has to be that like there was some turmoil and there was better for you in the short term to leave. You know what I'm saying? So one theme I think that's a huge deal for like long-term relationships is sort of like you stuck with it when you didn't have to, you know? And so I think in order for lifer to be special, it has to be unique. But now to answer your question of like, okay, how do companies deal with this? I think people deal with it differently, but my view is one, companies change a lot. They change a lot over time. Like when they get started, they are, I'll just give you an example. When a startup starts in the proverbial garage, right? The way you make decisions, the job responsibilities of each person are a certain way. Like everyone does everything, right? Everyone knows everything. It actually is just having like a group of 10 people. Definitionally, their responsibilities mashed together. There's more problems than there are people. Like I said, everyone does everything. Everyone knows what the other one's doing. There's sort of like there's almost like a familial aspect to it, right? Contrast that to something that's 1,000 people, and there's processes for how do we do things. There's more clear lines of responsibility for who does what. People are managing people. So the reason that I don't think like loyalty to the company is the most important aspect that matters there is like you might not do your best work at the new place, whereas you might be somebody who really enjoys being in like a small thing. Like you might do your best work at 0 to 10 people as
Yep.
opposed to 1,000 people.
Yep.
And what you really want for the company is people doing the best work of their lives. So because the company changes, it's not like one thing, right? So I think that's one thing that like matters a lot. I think the second thing, remember in pro sports, what you guys have is you have a definitional meritocracy of who plays, right? If you're not best for the team to win, you won't play. Now, obviously, there's all these other things that go into it, but fundamentally, right? For the core product that you have, there's a meritocracy. And I actually think that is like absolutely critical for any organization because what it is it provides fairness. What people really want above all else is they want fairness. They want to know, like, how does it work? And what are the rules to advance? On yours, in the most important one, most important part of the product for the organizations you guys used to work for, it's like, can you help us win? And so to me, in a company, the thing that you have to be able to look everybody in the face to say is you have to be able to tell them, look, if you help us win, you will be here in advance. It can't be, in my opinion, how long you've been here that is the thing that determines whether you get to, make money, be senior. Because all of a sudden, how do I recruit somebody new who might help us win if it's like I can literally never catch up, right? I can never be here as long as this other person. And I think it's immensely frustrating for people if they're playing a game that they know they can't win, right? So I actually think a huge thing comes back to, like, ultimately, if you actually care about the company, you need the best people to work there. And what you need is them doing their best work. And I actually think that it's like incongruous to say that, like, loyalty is the thing that determines whether you're the best person to work here. No, what I would say is the unique person that finds ways to be valuable at 10 people and valuable at 50 and valuable at 200 and valuable at 500, they're amazing. And they are like the soul of these places. But it's because it's unique, you know? And I guess to me as the leader, your obligation is to be loyal to, like, the mission, which is to, like, achieve something. And the only way to be loyal to the mission is to constantly, in business, get the best people, keep it fresh. And that's the way I square it in my mind. And I'm like pretty sure I'm right. You know what I'm saying? Like, on that for our world.
I agree. And I guess as you were explaining that, like, the thing that hits me is like, loyalty is a part of this, but that's not, you're not optimizing for loyalty. It's a byproduct of being able to evaluate. And I think this is the point here, not just your team, but the larger market, right? Like, you need to, how do you know you have the best guys or the best people? Sorry. But, like, unless you know the larger market, right? Like, again, multiple examples here. Like, Matthew Slater for the Patriots is considered like one of the greatest special teams players of all time. Like, he played for the Patriots like every Super Bowl for like 18 years. And again, they take him, they get him, they develop him, but, like, you don't keep him unless you know. And again, he was like he was like a 15-time Pro Bowler, like all pro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the loyalty only happens as a byproduct of knowing that he is the best of the best and there's ultimate craft. And again, he took so much pride in being a freaking gunner on punt, right? Like, this guy did his very particular job better than anybody for a long time. But, like, then loyalty again is the byproduct of that they've kept him. But again, you only, and vice versa, right? Like, the Giants look like freaking idiots because they have draft Saquon Barkley, have him in their building. They don't know how to evaluate him on the open market, right? Like, and realize how special he is. And he walks out the door to their division rival who, and then we go on to, he has one of the greatest years in the history of football for a running back. So, like, that inability to evaluate, right? Like, not just your team, but how it pertains to the larger market is, like, so critical in this.
I want to go back to what Robbie said, which I love: loyalty to the mission. So when you're talking about a Matthew Slater, was he loyal to, like, the craft of being a great gunner, right?
Yes.
Was he loyal to, hey, I'm going to optimize my position, and help the team win? It's not like I'm loyal to Bill Belichick. I'm loyal to
Yes.
right. I'm not
I
loyal.
love what you're saying.
Right. I'm loyal to being the best I can be in this position. And if you have enough of that, you're gonna win, right? That's the paramount thing. Loyalty to the mission.
Yes. And also, dude, of course, it has to be. If you really think about it, I think the loyalty to the mission is, like, the only way to have any, like, scaled approach here, because then what you can say is, like, we have a standard that is forever, right? Like, the mission is the thing that we all serve. Like, one of the greatest lines, and it's this very interesting thing, but and it's from a weird example, but, like, apparently Jack Dorsey, when he was running Twitter 100 years ago, he was talking to somebody who was, like, junior to him, and they introduced themselves to somebody at, like, some event. And they're like, "Oh, I'm so and so. I work for Jack." And Jack to his eternal credit, it's like, you don't work for me. We both work for Twitter. And I was like, that's cool. He was the CEO, right? And the sort of like elevation to that, I thought that was super cool. The other thing about loyalty, I'll tell you, we always talk about how you're on multiple teams. You would not believe the number of times in my world somebody is just destroyed their personal life, right? There's not spending enough time at home. They're doing dumb stuff. And, you'll tell them, if you work with them, you're like, listen, man, listen, person, you should leave. You gotta go and take care of stuff at home. And the person will look you right in the eye and they'll be like, well, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, why not? Well, my team here. And I'm like, are you a fucking idiot? Right? Like, well, you know what team is your number one team? It's your family. Like, you're going to talk about this team here above the team that your number one team. Can you say that in front of your spouse and your kids and imagine how embarrassed you'd be? So I do think this thing on loyalty also that matters. Like, remember what it's really about. You know what I'm saying? Like, one thing I liked about Harbaugh was like, he's like, start with your faith, then go to your family, and then come to us. And I'm like, yes. Like, there is an order that makes sense. And that's where I think, Shane, like, loyalty is a big deal, because it's like, loyalty to who? And also like loyalty to even within the company, to what? To mission or to the people?
And totally. And buried in this, then, again, I love that, because if you were like sitting down in an interview, or then like hopefully doing diligence on somebody, and if they had incredible loyalty to their family, you would hope that suggests that potentially they can develop and will have loyalty for us, right? Like, so. And that those are not, and in fact, those are both positives, and vice versa. The person who maybe demonstrates less loyalty in their personal life and what matters to them there, right? Like, would suggest that, like, well, maybe no, but it totally reminds me of, like, even as Cheryl, when we had her on, was talking about, like, in soccer, if the defenders all optimize for not giving up a goal, and the forwards only optimize for scoring, like, and neither work with each other, right? Like, the team's worse off, obviously, again, like, if they only are worried about their like core unit, as opposed to how they fit into the larger group.
I think another thing, man, is like, people change, organizations change, people change. People, like, I will tell you, like, one of the more notable things for me is, like, people are different when they get married. Like, we see people, like, all of us, we've seen people at different points of their lives, right? We see them before they're married. We see them after they get married. We see them before they have kids. We see them after they have kids. Sometimes people change. And the reason I think that matters so much is, like, it might not be the best place for them as they go and evolve, and as they, reach higher versions of themselves and this and that. Like, I think we all probably, like, look back at, like, what we thought about when we were like 22 or even 27 or 30, like, it's different. And I think that part of the thing, Shane, the reason I go back on this, like, loyalty point, is kind of like, man, like, it's hard to keep the same people forever, because they change too.
Yep. Off camera, we were talking about, the role of the hired gun. Is it okay to recruit hired guns? Is it okay to recruit and welcome to your team people who are completely transactional? And you talk about loyalty to the mission, like, that's all they have is loyalty to the mission. And you know what you're getting, all right, but you're not getting any more human connection. You're not building any trust. When is it okay to hire the transactional person, the hired gun, just to come in and do the deed?
Great. I think it's okay when, and again, this kind of comes back to the craftsmanship, right? Like, there's certain guys, they get said all the time in sports. It's like, oh, that guy's a pro, like a pro's pro. And I think what they mean by that, and I've been around these guys that again have had great longevity, but they've bounced from team to team and never, like, stuck. But they get in, and it is very important for them to play their position at the highest level, right? And they are craftsmen, right? They relentlessly work at that. Now, their larger motivator is not the team, at all. I don't know if it was top 5, right, to go to Jim Harbaugh, but it was very important to them to be really, really good at their job, like one of the best, and that's enough. I think, like, if they've demonstrated the relentlessness at that level, I think they can fit in with a larger team and be successful.
I totally agree with that, obviously, but that was a very positive take on the hired gun. I'll go with a little bit more of like a negative take on him. But the reason I tell you, like, my answer is still yes, Shane, but it's like, well, it depends on how bad of a situation are you in, right? Because when I look at it, like, there are times where a company needs to get sold, right? Like, it is not going to work as an independent entity, and it is time to get this to be part of a larger thing. Okay. And in those situations, you get a hired gun and you put in what's called a single trigger vesting requirement. Okay. So usually vesting for your stock happens, it's double trigger. It's like you need to be here for a certain amount of time and we need to have some sort of liquidity event. We go public or we sell. Otherwise, your stock doesn't vest. Cool. In the moments, the way that you can signal if a hired gun has come in is they get a single trigger vesting event. Doesn't matter how long you're here. Right?
we know what the deal is.
Right. What matters is
you don't have to spell it out.
Liquidity, right? You think this thing's sold, you get paid.
Yep.
Right. And that is like the canonical example or textbook sign of a hired gun. And like that happens because there's times where, like, look, I just need this thing to get done. Then like there's a spectrum. Let's say there's a company that is really nice and loose and easygoing, but not commercial at all. Sometimes, even if it's not going to work for a long time, like maybe the answer is like they bring in a hired gun to run sales. I'm like, hey, listen, this person's going to go and sell the shit out of this product, So yeah, I think it's okay sometimes. And Shane, Pat Riley can't have 12 milk drinkers. Yep. Sometimes 100%. You need someone to drink some Jack Daniels.
Creative tension.
I think you got to see what kind of situation you're in, like, and make the decision. If you're winning and you're everything's cool, whatever. But like, I don't know. Like, I'll use an example. I also think, just to like mix sports and business for a second, dude. Like, it also matters who's already in the building. Like when the Bulls got Rodman, like he's kind of a hired gun in that situation, but they knew like, well, we have our like alpha dog and he's going to be like managed accordingly. So I think that also goes in like business sometimes where it's like, okay, like could Bezos have brought in a hired gun if he wanted to? It's like, yeah, there's no question who the boss is.
Yeah.
So maybe that also matters.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point on the timing. I think the context of the time will determine whether the hired gun is worthwhile. And I would argue, unless you're near the end, you're trying to sell, okay, or you see the light of the end of the tunnel. Yeah. It is never good to hire.
It's hard to argue with this. Yeah,
it's never. Why? When you have people who are solely focused on mission, okay, and don't create any trust amongst the team, okay, it's all great till it's not, okay. And the one constant and the one thing that's going to happen is there's going to be crisis. There's going to be adversity, okay. Unless you're so close to the end, obviously you're exploring the sale, you're finalizing the sale, yada yada yada. And when the crisis hits and there's no trust, the entire operation falls apart. All right. Brittle team. Okay. So we know the one thing that's going to be constant is there's going to be adversity. There's going to be trouble. All right. Something's going to get messed up. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson. Right. And unless you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you can just basically limp across the line or just triage it, that mercenary is going to undermine everything you're trying to build. As a cohesive unit, as a cohesive company, as a cohesive team, right? And we talk about athletes at the end. I would argue that the Bulls did bring in Rodman because Michael Jordan was up there, right? They saw the end. Michael Jordan wasn't a 24-year-old at that point, right? And they probably wouldn't have brought Dennis Rodman in for a 24-year-old Michael Jordan, right? But he came back. Okay. And they knew they could win a couple more championships. And so, you know what? We see the end of the tunnel. We can bring in this hired gun, this mercenary. Right. And so I think it's super important that when you talk about this, I don't think you ever should bring in a hired gun, a mercenary, unless you know you're at the final stage and you're trying to squeak out a win or get across the finish line.
I think there's an element here of how rare the talent is, like what they do. And you brought up sales, Ravi, like because it's such a big, like again, this is the epitome of transaction. It's like eat what you kill, like the stereotype of like the frat guys, like hard charging sales guys. That in certain people, right, like especially enterprise sales, they have this like knack for it and can get it done, and they're highly sought after. But for me, I think of like left tackles in football. Like there are only so many human beings that can do that at a high level. And I don't give a shit how loyalty is to the bigger team. If he can play left tackle and it is important to him to be a good left tackle, like he's worth it.
He's going to protect you.
No
The
way.
Chiefs are a perfect
way.
example of this.
No
The Chiefs have had it has been a turnstile at the left tackle position for the Chiefs. And when they had guys that were good enough, they won Super Bowls. And last year they didn't, and they didn't win one. And again, like it has been transactional at that position. And if you get a pros pro, a guy that it can play winning football, you get him, and it's enough.
I can't wait for Battier to yell at you.
Like it's enough.
Winning football, the only way a line is good is if they're cohesive.
No, not left tackle. You play by yourself out there. It's a lonely place, just out on the edge.
So
not a lot of help, and you're blocking freaking Micah Parsons. The werewolf is running off the edge.
So,
and it's loud. You're on the road. The fans are screaming, and your quarterback's lifting his leg, and you're trying to time up the snap. Like again, this is a very special skill set that there aren't guys on the street walking around that you can go get to do this. Like there are not even 32 of them.
So you're
Think
okay.
about that.
We're able to clone Orlando Pace and bring him back. Okay. But it's Orlando Pace and he's an asshole. No one wants to, doesn't want to talk to anybody. He doesn't look anybody in the eye. And you say, Orlando, you're so toxic. And I think Orlando Pace is actually a good dude, but like evil Orlando Pace. Okay. We don't want you, don't come to practice. Okay. I want you to work out at home and like, here's the playbook, show up on Sunday and just do your job. And that's good enough. You'd be okay with that.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I want to
rush.
Are you
against,
kidding? I want to rush against that guy.
Are you kidding?
Shane,
yes.
But can I tell you something for a second? So obviously, I don't know the answer to this question. But if you made me guess who I'd agree with in this case, I'd probably agree with Alex, only because like he was protected by a left tackle. But like that's just one man's opinion. But here's what I would say though, Shane. I think that if I'm like a business leader right now hearing this, I'm sort of like nodding my head, being like, I know I shouldn't do this. I know. But dude, you have no idea how big my problem is, right? Not you, but like we, like the guys like don't live in the theory right now. Like I'm gonna lose this. And I think the thing that's actually happening is you and I both agree that if you're not going to be able to, if the thing's going to go to zero, yeah, bring in the hired gun and get it done. Cool. But everybody has their own definition of like crisis. There are companies that are like flatlining on growth where they'll be okay, but they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go from a growth company to a cash flow company. I can't have that happen. I'm going to lose my status. I got to do this. So I actually think the most interesting thing is it's sort of like, how bad does the leader think their problem is, right? And how close are you to the end of not like the company? We all agree then, but the real thing is like, you can only do it when it's like a crisis. You're saying it's a crisis because you're going to die in the pocket if somebody, isn't there. I'm saying it's a crisis for the business if it's going to die. I think the real thing that ends up happening is leaders determine what crisis is, and some of them have too low of a standard and they run from crisis to crisis. And they do crazy shit every time they think it's a crisis. But you see what I'm saying? That's just like normal course business operations. That I actually think is a huge deal. I think that you can break your principle in certain cases, I guess, but you can't do it all the fucking time.
That's the problem.
That's the thing.
Well, talent is a drug.
Yeah.
Talent is a drug, and you are enticed by the easy wins of having talent. And that is, I will go down with the ship on that. You can find talent anywhere.
No, see, this is my point. This is about scarcity.
Is cheap.
Like when there isn't talent everywhere. Like again, that's my point. When there is supply scarcity, right, for this talent, right? Like you got this problem, you need an answer. There's only so many guys that can, or people that can do this thing, right? Again, there are not 32 starting left tackles in the NFL.
Here's what's interesting, Alex. Listen, you were a starting quarterback in the NFL for 16 years, right? So you are like, hey, listen, I know there's not very many of them. Cool. Let's just say right now you have like earned credibility on like, no. It's a crisis. There is scarcity, whatever. I do totally think that Shane is right, that basically people that weren't starting quarterbacks in the NFL equivalent, right, are determining that there's crises everywhere and then they do dumb shit. Let's just give you that it's the left tackle. Okay, let's just say that you're right. The problem is people will do it for the fucking nose guard. They will do it for every other position too because they mentally create crises every time something goes wrong. And so this is actually something that happens with people all the time, which is that they tell you like, no. It's not that I actually want to do this, but I have to. And here's why. And so it's like there's not even the exceptions. They just like do it all the time, rather
I
than
agree. The exception cannot be the rule, right?
Yeah.
However, if you are going to be so like steadfast that I will never, ever,
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm
only going to optimize for loyalty, you'll never fucking win, ever. Like, does that make, like, I don't think you can only optimize for loyalty, like building a team.
I think you better have a better protection scheme. How about that?
You're the famous one that said you want them whiskey drinkers. You need some whiskey
Jack
drinkers.
Daniels.
No, you do.
What about
Daniels,
Jack
you do.
Daniels?
But that's more for creative. That's more for cohesive tension. That's more for competitive tension. And that I believe in bringing in whiskey drinkers just to keep people on edge. All right, and introduce a dynamic, right? And if their talent can meld, and we can bring that person along, that's additive. I'm talking about the person that doesn't want to work with anybody, is toxic, and brings people down. All right, despite their immense talent, it is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So I agree with you, Ravi. Like we define our own crises.
That's the thing,
right? And it goes back to time frame. What is your time frame? Right.
And I think that here's the thing, which is like, I think that a huge element of being like a good decision maker is knowing what an actual crisis is and where you can go and like do something. Like Alex, I really believe this. Like, I actually think that like your definition of crisis here is a good one, just so you know. Like your left tackle, protecting the blind side, right? Like, and specifics to the position of they actually have to play less within the scheme and like more as an individual.
Yeah.
That to me is like actually a pretty unique definition of like, no. I'm not saying everywhere. I'm not saying in the wide receiver. I'm just saying for this one specific thing. And I'm cool with that. I think that what I would tell you a lot of the times is like, maybe it's as simple as this. We use this term at Sequoia called crucible moments a lot. There's like companies go through crucible moments. And what we always tell people is like, listen, if you have one crucible moment a year, right? However you define it, cool. Sounds like you're probably defining it right. If you have 10, you are defining it wrong. That is not a crucible moment. Yeah. And if you have 0, you're probably defining it wrong too, right? Like there's you're probably asleep at the switch if you say you never have them. Yep. And so I think that's to me the thing, which is like, how often are these situations coming up, right? Whatever. Like I'll give you an example of something that came from the business world for me. There was a company that I once observed where at one point the person was saying that we have to like hire this person who wasn't great in like communications. And it was like, why? And there's like all these compromises that were gonna get made to hire this person. It's like, well, we have a comms crisis. We really need somebody. And you just like kind of like look at the person and you're like, do you really think you're using the word crisis properly right now? Like, like comms, like things last like 24 hours. Like think about what goes on in the world and then we just like forget. Like, do you really think our company has a comms crisis where you should like piss off the rest of your leadership team by like doing this? Like you might have the wrong definition of crisis. My point is I think that like that is the thing that happens. It's not the left tackle breakout, one person on the football team problem. It's like you get a bunch of assholes on the team because you're like, oh, I need to protect my quarterback and the line is really important and everyone, you know what I'm saying? They don't actually carve it out.
Totally. I agree. Yeah. This is like back when, and you remember who was it when Vince Young called the Eagles the dream team? You remember like, and it was all these like big name free agents all coming together. And obviously that was Andy Reid still and didn't work out so well. But No, totally agreed. That again, like I don't think you can do this everywhere. I don't think you can build a team out of just a bunch of mercenaries. But like I also again don't think you could be so like hard
And,
fast that you can't
and,
be
and there's
that you.
also from a management standpoint, you're never going to get dinged, okay, by making a splashy hire for spiky talent because it's a proxy that you're trying,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So you bring in this amazing coder, all right, that he's got this long resume but is a complete dick. All right, everyone's going to be like, okay, because a couple things happen. Everybody says, "Oh, I can change him. I can change her." Right? Oh, our culture is going to be so good. They're just gonna shape up, and we're gonna get their talent, and it's going to be an amazing thing, right? And Pat Riley's done that literally for 30 years of getting guys and bringing them into the Heat culture and making them lose a few pounds, and they're really good players, right? And they can't replicate that success elsewhere, right? So leaders think I can change them. They don't know my leadership style. I can raise them up. And B, there's some protectionism there that I'm not like my shareholders aren't going to come after me. My employees, they're going to give me the benefit of the doubt for this super talented person, right? Until that talented person shows their ass and they're not a team player. And now you got a whole new set of problems, right? That you have to unwind and undo.
Shane, okay, how do you take this? I agree with that. That makes sense. I do think there's hubris in there, as well as I hadn't thought about the second point that you just said of like sort of you call it protectionism, but like makes sense. There is some element to me that I think about of like, I always tell you guys, my dad has this quote of like, you can't learn someone else's lessons for them. I do think it's valuable, like as you're like an early leader, to like make some of these mistakes yourself and not just listen to like the old heads around you, because you can't viscerally know that until you're like right now when you're talking, I'm kind of like nodding my head, being like, "Yep, I remember doing that. Yep." You know what I'm saying? Like, yep, I remember thinking that. Like, yep, I remember ignoring that back channel reference that I got. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember.
When did you know that it wasn't going to work out?
Oh, dude.
When did you like exactly the moment? Like when did that moment happen? You're like, crap, this person they're really good. She has it. And when did you know? Oh crap!
I can tell you inside of 2 months, inside of 2 months. Because what happens is what happens, they come in, they're on great behavior, they do the good thing, and you're like, I'm a fucking genius. I saw the matrix here. Like all the rest of these people, they're so stupid. They just needed like a really great leader and someone who's really visionary and good looking, and then it would be cool. You know what I'm saying? And then what happens is like 2 months later, something happens that you'd heard of in the back channel reference. The same behavior, some like little smidgen of it. And you're like, right? Like this is the thing that I thought only happened to the other people. And when you realize it, you're like, oh no, what am I gonna do now?
Oh no.
And you feel, to your point, like you feel so dumb because you're like, I knew that this was it. Now I think that, like you said, it doesn't happen every time. There was a time in something I was involved with where we were like, listen, we know. Basically, Shane, what happened was we weren't doing all that well, right, as a company. And we were kind of like, we don't really even have a hand here. Like, yes, this person is imperfect, but like, what are we going to do? We don't have a good hand. And so we purposefully, understandably, we knew that we were getting some more talent than we deserved, but it also had more problems. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's what we could get. That to me was okay. Calculated risk. Like you got to do what you got to do. But the times where it's the worst are when you're like, you get like impatient, where you just kind of need something to do and you do it. And then I totally agree. It's like that. There is a moment where you realize you messed it up and it is like, it's just so pronounced. You're like, I'm so dumb. Why did I do this?
I think your idea that how they fit in with the team and their relationship to the team is important in the sense of like, to use another football analogy, like maybe one of the most like high profile mercenaries in football was Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Ever. Right. And again, this is a guy that like could stereotypically
Totally.
take the opponent's best receiver out of the game, right?
Yep.
Like you just weren't throwing over there.
Yep.
And he did. Falcons, and like again, the famously the Niners needed a corner and went
Yep.
and got him for a
Yep.
1-year rental and won
Yep.
a championship. And
Yep.
then Dallas got him and won a bunch of championships. And then he
Yep.
went to the Ravens and Washington at the end. Like again, but he played in isolation a lot of the time because he was this man-to-man corner. And again, he could plug in and play. And you want to talk about a craftsman, right? Again, like that he took the challenge of being maybe the best cover corner ever, right? But again, not necessarily this loyalty to any team in particular, but does it matter? And then on the flip side of that, do you guys know who's maybe considered the greatest arm talent ever at quarterback?
Jeff George.
Jeff George.
Wait, really?
Like, yeah, it's kind of Dan Marino, Jeff George, or like
Jeff George. Jeff George went to University of Illinois, right?
Yep.
That's
right. First pick.
Like, kind of
Colts.
widely considered one of the greatest talents at the quarterback position, but just also regarded as a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And played for 14 years. I think he played on 8 or 9 teams, just freaking bounced around team to team, rentals. I mean, could play and start, but just like never found success ever and never sustained success, and was kind of known to be, like a me guy. And again, had confrontations with teammates and coaches and stuff. But again, this is the quarterback position.
You
He's the
can't
guy
do
that's
that.
stepping in the huddle. This is so often you got the ball in your hand every freaking play.
Yeah.
There are so many people depending on you and trusting you. And like that, I think I don't think there's ever been a story of that position. But again, those two, and to your point, like I know you threw out sales, but I do think that, like again, in the business world, so often that is a unit that works in isolation, right? Like they got one job to do, and it's very particular, and they need to go do it. And so,
this is super interesting. Super interesting. So we talk about sales in a tech company. There's actually a role. Okay, there's a role, and there is a role at like places like Google and Amazon or whatever. Imagine if you're like an amazing engineer, right? Like I'm talking like you could just like you can make magic, right? Give you the racing gloves and the big gulp, hashtag shout out to my friend Sagar who came that up, but like then just make magic. Okay. Anyway, some of those times those people aren't great managers, as you can imagine, right? Like they're highly introverted. They don't really want to manage people. They just want to like cook, right?
Yep.
So these tech companies, as they got bigger, like the normal course for an employee is you get more seniors to take on management. And so they had this problem where they're like, this person is not a good manager, but they are an obscenely good engineer. And so they just created a new role. It's called the distinguished engineer. Literally, it's just like we now have a track where you don't have to talk to anybody. You can just like get busy. Okay, you can just code. And we're going to pay you like a senior person. You can be senior, but you're called a distinguished engineer. And one of my favorite tweets that I've ever had was during like Kyrie's peak like craziness as a teammate. Like he's going out there, he's saying crazy stuff. He keeps on getting like in weird places on the team, and everyone's kind of like whatever. And I'm like, they should have a distinguished engineer for the NBA, right? Like, because Kyrie Irving would be the most amazing distinguished engineer that there is. Like, dude, just like go play. Like, just go play by yourself. You are so good at just like basketball. Like the things that you can do are ridiculous.
Yep.
And don't worry about managing. Don't worry about leading the team. Just get out there and cook. And I will tell you, like, I wrote that, and then I was like, this is very niche content. And all these people who are like nerdy basketball fans like me, like they're like, this is brilliant. This is the greatest tweet of all time. But that is one of my good takes. Kyrie should be a distinguished engineer,
Just isolate him, silo him.
Just go in the corner and do amazing shit with the basketball.
Say less, Kyrie. Say less.
Alex, did you ever have a teammate? You don't need to name names where the talent was tantalizing, and then you knew right away in either OTAs or preseason, you're like, oh man, I got to deal with this guy.
I mean, for me, this just screams the receiver position. Okay? Like, let me just, this whole conversation, receivers have been in the back of my mind because these guys are the biggest fucking prima donnas of all time, right? The egos are through the roof. They are so hyper competitive with each other. Who's the best? Who has the best stats? Who makes the most money? I mean, let me tell you this infamously. Jerry Rice, right? Maybe the greatest football player ever, Like this guy, like he wasn't always like roses and easy to be around as a teammate. Like if he didn't get his fucking catches, he was hot, right? Like he's like, man, like infamously, like, like again, and I think that's part of obviously what made him great. Like that was buried in there. The same thing, the same spikiness that made him so good also made him not so easy necessarily to be around all the time. And every great receiver that I've ever played with is kind of like this.
Really?
Like,
Did you guys see the tweets that I sent you guys recently from Chad Ochocinco?
Oh, so good.
Yes.
So
That's like
good.
2 a.m. Alex, you should describe it, but he's like, I used to call my quarterback at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's like, I'm open.
I'm open. That's my point. I'm open. You would come back into the huddle every fucking play. Every receiver would tell me they're open. Then the worst part is you can't like validate it in the moment. And so you really had to like, this is like coaches knowing which players, when they give them the review signal, like which ones they can trust.
Yeah.
Because then you'd watch the film the next day and you'd be like, what the hell? You were not open. Like, that's not open. You putting your hand up, and so like, no, there is a give and take with all these guys. Like, like Randy Moss, man, like, like these guys, like they're again, and how special they are versus it. Tyreek Hill, like again, playing with them, you knew, and as I got older, you knew again that if there was a level of talent and production, I was just fine with it, right? Like hell yeah, sign me up. I can
Alex,
handle
you know
this,
what I've started
right?
doing?
I'll take a little bit of heartburn.
You know what I've started doing now that since you told us about what Randy Moss would do before games?
Yeah.
Now I just lie down in my office and watch SpongeBob before board meetings, just to get myself in the mindset.
Yeah. But like again, and I don't, this is a different conversation, but like you want those guys with the killer instinct, right? You want the guy that thinks they're freaking the best out there and that they cannot lose. And I want the ball all the time. Like I don't want a receiver that doesn't come back and tell me, throw me the ball, right? Like coming to that conclusion as a quarterback.
If you have leaders that can deal with it.
Yes.
Right? If you have people that can deal with it.
For
right?
Sure.
And maybe that's the sign of a great coach, right? That knows how to extract what's worth extracting and not let what is not worth extracting not affect the team.
Shane, you know what's fascinating about what you just said there? You remember what you said earlier of like every coach thinks that they can every leader thinks that they can be the special one to get the thing out of this person.
Yep.
Have I told you guys this about what's happened to median CEO pay over time?
No.
Okay. So the median, right?
Yeah.
Like, not the average, the 50th percentile. Median CEO pay, if you go look it up, keeps on going up. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Is that because companies are more profitable? What is it? No. I'm sorry, companies are more profitable, but median CEO pay keeps on going up because everyone who's a CEO has been like pretty good at their job coming up, right? Like, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't make CEO. And so nobody believes that they are a below median performer. Not a single CEO. Every CEO thinks that they're, if you ask any CEO, what percentile are you? Like, I guarantee you the answer will be between the 80th and 99th percentile. Like the most humble one in the world. They're like, I don't know, like 80th percentile, right? Like nobody's like, I'm like a 5th percentile CEO performer, but like definitionally there have to be, right? Like it's just a distribution. It's within CEOs. So what happens is compensation committees always hear their CEO being like, well, yeah, I think I'm pretty good. And so then they just pay everyone. Okay, well, let me look at this comp data. Well, okay, we'll target the 75th percentile, the 80th percentile, but you're really 99th, right? But we're going to target, 80th percentile. And so then what happens in the median? It keeps going up, right? Every time. And it's the same thing that happens on coaches, which is why they take on these players sometimes, because they're like, well, I'm not like a regular coach. I'm a great coach. I can deal with it, and it comes back. I was just thinking about what you said earlier. It all comes back to that. It's like in the movie, Mean Girls, when the woman's like, I'm not a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
So intellectual honesty is a great skill to have, right?
I think so.
Knowing what you don't know.
This is why the public markets are just an incredible gift to the world. Because people that play in the public markets generally have a reasonable ego, right? As you can imagine. If you're like a hedge fund owner, or like somebody who invests for a living, present company excluded, of course. But the thing that's so great about the public markets is they are the ultimate truth teller. You can say, oh, I'm really great. Yeah, I'm a great this. But you know what happens? Every day, every minute, every second, you're smacked in the face with like truth. I don't know, man. Show me the numbers. Show me the receipts.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
The
but like
public
how often are they wrong though? Right?
Sorry,
Like
no,
people
they
don't
are.
know.
But all that matters, yes. But like
Right.
over time, you need to prove yourself to be right. Right?
Yeah.
It's over the long term, they're right. So the closest thing that we have in the business world to sports is the public markets.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's immediate feedback over and over and over and over again. It's the closest thing that we have.
Yeah.